Thanks everyone for joining. We're here with two amazing speakers, both social entrepreneurs, and we have a very interesting topic. We advertise it as travel with purpose, but I think in our conversation just before the talk, it evolved into even something more around what is the human connection. This is basically where we're going to steer the conversation around. I would like to introduce you both of them, and then they're going to say a little bit about themselves. We have Taylor Conroy from the company Journey that he's a co-founder of, and we have Jesse Israel that you might have seen through The Big Quiet, which just recently took place in Central Park. So Taylor, we can start with you.
Hi guys, how are you? Yeah, lunch. Yeah, so my name's Taylor, and the 33-second version of my story is I started my working life as a firefighter in my early 20s, picked up real estate on the side, loved real estate, loved entrepreneurship, and working as much as humanly possible. And I just took to real estate. You guys remember when the real estate market was amazing? Before the thing. That's when I got into real estate, was when it was doing that. And I thought, I was like, it's always going to be like this. Everything was selling in 2 days. And I did really well in real estate. Sold a whole bunch of properties, like 500 properties. And I loved it. I had the truck and the house and the motorbike and all of the things. And still had a lot of emptiness inside. And so I went on my first journey, which was in 2009. And I went to Uganda and Kenya. I visited a whole bunch of different villages, and one in particular really stuck with me, and I feel like a big piece of my heart is still there in Uganda, on the border of the Congo in the Rwenzori mountain range, where I met a number of different villagers, and I heard their stories, and I'll save my kind of sob story for now and just say that it impacted me at a really deep level. And I always dreamt of giving other people this type of experience, this like one-to-one human connection with a culture they never would have learned about, with people they never would have met in a country that they've never would have gone to, because it changed me at such a visceral level. And after that, I started thinking there's got to be a way to use my kind of sales and marketing expertise to benefit the world. And I ended up coming up with an idea to fund one schoolhouse in one of the countries that I'd visited on the African continent, in Kenya. And that schoolhouse was going to cost $10,000. So I decided that I would reach out to 33 of my friends. I would ask them all to give $3.33 a day for 3 months. And so 33 friends giving the price of a coffee a day for 3 months would equal $10,000. And I did that by making each of them like a personal video. So for Mike, who's in the audience, I would say, hey, Mike, really excited about this. We're going to build a school in Kenya, yada, yada. They all gave, and in a day we raised $10,000. So 33 people, $333 a day for 3 months is $10,000. And I was blown away by this. A friend of mine tried it as well. He raised $10,000 in a day. We ended up building a company called Change Heroes out of it, which enabled people to do this, reach out to their friends personally. And it ended up funding, it started funding 100 schoolhouses in 8 countries. And then it started funding water projects and girls' scholarships, anti-sex trafficking work, and homelessness initiatives and veterans rehabilitation, all these different projects all over the world. It ended up funding about 400 projects in 14 countries. And what was fascinating is we had 16,000 people give from 80 countries all over the world, give their $3.33 a day for 3 months. And they had one big problem, which is that they couldn't go and see the project that they had funded. And this generation, our generation, we want to see it, right? We want to experience it. We want to see it, taste it, feel it. Maybe not taste it, but you want to see the project that we're funding, that we're getting to be a part of. And so then we, at some point, decided that we would start Journey about 7 months ago, which is a transformational travel company where we bring, a week ago, which is I think why I've got a cold now. A week ago, we brought 70 people down to Nicaragua to build 26 homes that they had funded. And they met the families in person. They heard their stories. They connected with these people at a really core, visceral level. And so that experience 7 years ago that I had in Uganda has now finally come completely full circle. And now I'm standing here talking to you guys about like this dream that I had 7 years ago is just now a reality. We've done four trips so far, and we have a trip happening every single month. Next month is 100 people to Mexico City, where we'll build probably 10 homes in 2 days, and as well as visit a number of other projects. And the core of this is much bigger than trips or travel. It's human connection. It's bringing Googlers together to have an experience they never would have had if they just stayed in New York, and meeting people on the ground and connecting people at a visceral level. Because I think with that, a lot of change could happen in the world.
So
period.
Yeah, great story. And we had also Jesse.
Oh, I said that was going to be a 33-second video.
Yes,
Sorry.
yes. I'm just looking here at the clock.
My bad.
So, good 33 seconds. So Jesse, tell us a little bit about you.
Sure, but first, I noticed in your bio you left out the period when you were a professional bodybuilder.
Oh, yes.
Could we see the photo?
Yes, please, let's, you have the control over the presentation, so.
Thanks for bringing that up. Well, you know, okay. You did this. So, where is this thing? There we go. That's in front of about 400 people in a pair of bright blue man panties. And the funny thing about this photo, which I was going to tell you guys before we made this like a fireside chat, was, you know, you have to get up at like 12 a.m., 2 a.m., 4 a.m., and 6 a.m. to lather that tan on. Can you see how dark that is? Like, I'm a pasty person. And the funniest thing about this is that they didn't tell me I was supposed to put it on my face, too. I remember showing up. They're like, "Where's your face tan?" I was like, "What?" They're like, "Just get on stage." So
maybe we could just leave that up for the rest of the talk.
I think it could be a placeholder.
Yes.
I'm actually wearing the
man panties.
Can you can you screen that, please? Thanks.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jesse Israel. So my story starts, I'll start at sophomore year NYU. My roommate and I started managing the band MGMT when they were college students, and we decided to create a dorm room record label to put out their first album. And we wound up spending the next 9 years running a company called Cantora. Cantora developed and signed a handful of bands through hundreds of concerts, and eventually raised a technology fund where we were helping startups and their founders navigate the music industry. And on the side, I started experimenting with building community. Started with a cheeseburger club that grew to multiple cities, and then a bike club called the Cyclones that was bringing hundreds and hundreds of people together to go on these big group social bike adventures. And eventually, about 2 years ago, I wound up leaving my company Cantora so I could really give myself to community building. And about 6 months into my journey after leaving the company, I started organizing group meditations with people, like people in this room, people I knew from the music world, from the tech business, people that were starting to pick up a practice but didn't have a place to share it with other like-minded individuals. So we created something called MediClub, where people could come together in New York and share quiet in a modern setting. And after every MediClub meditation, we'd also create safe space for people to talk about challenges that were going on in their lives. And for the past year or so, I've been developing the MediClub community. We now have gatherings that happen every Wednesday night in 10 different neighborhoods, run by different members of our community, where a group meditation occurs and conversations occur. And we also do something called the Big Quiet, which is sort of our large-scale celebration, where we do mass meditations and book DJs and musicians. And we've done that from Central Park to Lincoln Center to a giant boat on the Hudson River. And that's what I'm up to.
How good is that?
Yeah. I think it's great, actually. What do you both do? So, as Taylor mentioned, we turned this into a fireside chat just kind of last minute, and we had a very good conversation outside of the audience while we were still preparing. And here's like the first question I'd like to get you started is, what is the human connection? Because I see this is kind of like the topic maybe that's uniting what you guys do.
Jesse?
Let's see, human connection for me really starts with something that I'll refer to as the lost art of socializing. And what I see a lot, and there's nothing wrong with this, is when we connect with one another in a social setting, we're often talking about what's happening externally, where we're from, what we do, where we live, what we wear. And every now and then we'll have those moments where we really connect with someone, where we talk about the self. And there's something really nourishing about that experience. To me, when we're able to go to that deeper level in a social environment, we're able to more deeply connect and experience more human connection with someone else. When it involves the individual, I believe it has to do with getting clear with who we are as our true selves, getting clear with why we're on this earth, and being able to show up in a way that embodies that.
Yeah.
I think we were talking over lunch about human connection and saying that in my mind it's something that we're all, maybe I'm just projecting over the entire human race, but I believe it's something that we're all yearning for, especially in our culture, yearning for more human connection and connection with ourselves, which is why the Big Quiet has over 1,000 people show up to these events, right? For people to kind of have space and a safe space to tap into themselves. And so what's interesting about this is that I really feel, which is why I'm so excited for this kind of structure, that what you're doing is you're promoting human connection, you're promoting connection with yourself, you're promoting connection with the greater whole through silence. And whereas I believe what we're doing is the same through a different kind of shared experience. Your shared experience is through silence, our shared experience is through typically building homes or taking part in other projects. And I wonder if I can click through this without it. I'm going to tell you guys a little story that I just love from our last trip. We went to Nicaragua, and here, would you be able to put this slide up, please? This is a moment that happens. This is my favorite moment of our trips. This is a moment that happens at the end of the second day. So people build all day. You land on Friday. You build all day Saturday. It's very hard work. You're drinking like 6 liters of water every day, and no peeing happens. Like, you're dehydrated, you're exhausted, you're getting sunstroke. And at the end of the second day of 2 crazy hard days of working, this moment happens, which is a ribbon cutting ceremony where you stand with a family that is going to be receiving potentially the very first brand new home they've ever had, and you watch them cut a ribbon and unlock the lock to their very first kind of secure locking door with a roof over their head, a foundation, locking windows, and the dignity that comes with having a place to call home. And those hands belong to a 95-year-old man named Senor Rodriguez, who I saw banging nails, screwing screws, setting walls for 2 days with the precision that only comes with a century on this earth of experience. And after this is the moment that happened. That's Senor Rodriguez, the moment right before he walked into his brand new home. And right beside him, which you can't see, is a 40-year-old nightclub promoter named Marlon, who funded this home. And this was the moment where I saw Marlon completely change from being this, he's this tattooed, like very masculine, he's a beautiful man, and just so, he could be intimidating looking, to being this teddy bear. He just broke down, because this is the moment where it became real. It became like, this is not just coming here on some sort of adventure and going paddleboarding and seeing some sea turtles. This is changing this man's life forever, and this man's family potentially forever. And so that one-to-one connection, there's no going back for Marlon. He knows that he worked alongside Senor Rodriguez for 2 days. He knows he's the same as him, but was born in a different place. And there's this connection that happened that will never go away. And so that's an experience that we try to give at scale. That's why we have this company, is can we replicate the experience of, and the way that I speak about it is different than how Jesse speaks about it, but of oneness, of realizing that we're the same as everyone. And I believe that if we did realize that we're the same as everyone, then separation would drop, whether it be between religion or race or creed or whatever it is. And a lot of things would be very different.
Yeah. Any similar magic moment to share, Jesse, from what you do?
Yeah, sure. I'll go back to that first MediClub that I mentioned, which was about December 2014, when we gathered about 20 people to share a meditation. And after we sat in silence for about 20 minutes, I took a risk, and I decided to share with the group about some of the challenges I was faced with and some of the fear I was kind of caught up in from having left this company that I developed for 9 years and sort of jumped into the unknown, and was experiencing a lot of comparison to my peers and a lot of doubt around the uncertainty of the situation. And I decided to share it with the room. There was something about this group of people coming together to meditate. It felt safer than maybe the usual social gathering. So, and I remember I was so close to not taking it there because it felt so uncomfortable. But I got real. And after I took a couple minutes to kind of explain what I was going through, I asked the room if anyone could relate. And there was that like 5-second period of just total silence, and I was just killing myself. It was so uncomfortable. And then one brave soul chimed in and pretty much was able to relate to most of it just through their own lens. The work thing was a little different. The relationship was a little different, but there were the same elements of fear. There were the same elements of comparison and issues around uncertainty. And after that person shared, the room just lit up in conversation. And it was that same notion of oneness, in that we realized we're all dealing with the same stuff. There's something incredibly self-validating about hearing someone else go through a similar thing. And there's something incredibly healing about being able to share that with the group. And when a group of people, and these are people who kind of knew each other from, these are like tech investors and people I knew from the music industry, and people aren't usually talking about this kind of thing. But realizing that we're all going through this together, in our very privileged lives, but in a way that we're not usually talking about, was very magical. And that was probably the first time with the work that I'm doing now where I realized the power of human connection.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. We also spoke about something else a little earlier about how, we create a bubble around ourselves and we have a lot of walls. And this is something that we experience a lot in our generation because we live outside of the communities that we're born in, usually. Something that you mentioned earlier struck with me about the people that came from Texas, for example, that are very, very different, that had to share living space and working space with people that were very, very different from them and how that transformed them. So if you could elaborate on that, Taylor.
Yeah, I was so nervous about this. So we had, I'm from Canada, so we're very liberal in Canada. And we don't get the whole gay marriage thing. We just call it marriage and have for a long time. And these dynamics, and I remember doing this talk in Dallas at a gentleman's house who's one of the most generous, big, soft teddy bears I've ever met in my life, who put together this group that had ended up funding like 10 homes altogether. And their political views were very different than what I was brought up with in Canada. And I was fascinated by it. And I felt very disconnected, and so I could actually just learn. And one of the people at the dinner was a right-wing conservative talk show host. And I was so intrigued by this guy. I was like, tell me all of these things, because I'm only in California or New York. I don't really get this kind of side of it. And all of these people came on the trip, right? So we had a gentleman who, he said he wore the shirt just for me, has a shirt that had a machine gun on it that said, "Defend Dallas," like in big letters. And I remember sitting, I think I might have been sitting with Lauren, who's our head of corporate partnerships, right there, and at the table, and I was like, no. Lauren, is he wearing that shirt? And I walked over, he's like, "I'm wearing this just for you, Taylor." And so we had these totally different opinions, but what was beautiful is that these people were intermixing on the job sites, like an equivalent to building Senor Rodriguez the house, and none of those things came up on the job site. The thing that brought everyone together is that they were there because they cared, because they wanted to do something better in the world, because they wanted to connect, because they wanted to, make a difference. And all of those things go away, because that at the base level, that's what I think is at our core as like human beings. We want to make other people's lives better because that inherently makes our life better. It's all one and the same.
Yeah, I like that. It's like the equalizer when we have like a common experience that actually can bring a lot of these differences together. And this to me is like so fascinating around, again, what you both do, bringing just a lot of this experience together. We spoke also about empowerment, actually, which is another kind of word that resonated with me, and I wanted to kind of start maybe the conversation slightly in this direction around what do you think is that attracts people to it, and how does it empower them in both of traveling within, is what I think you do, and then traveling outside to different communities, what Taylor does.
Yeah, well, first of all, empowerment is one of these kind of like millennial buzzwords that I've been hearing a lot of right now, and I think it's good that that's a buzzword. I think where it starts for me is there's this sort of generational hunger to get clear about purpose and sort of mission in life and what we do and how we show up in the world. We are looking for tools and we are looking for ways to find empowerment, right? We want to explore our personal power so we can, give that to the world. So what I've seen is that when empowerment can be given to other individuals or explored with other individuals, there's a real craving, there's a real hunger for tapping into that. And one way that we've been exploring that with the work that we're doing is when we saw that the experience that was happening at MediClub was something that people were enjoying, and our gatherings were growing, and we started to do these 1,000+ person Big Quiets. We were looking at, well, how can we empower individuals in our community who are passionate about this experience and care about these values, and allow these experiences to spread in a more intimate setting. So we created a circles program so we could essentially have 10-person gatherings that explore group meditation and the same kind of conversations that I mentioned earlier. And those would be entirely run by members of the community, empowered with a skill set to lead the meditation and to create the safe space for people to come together. And that was just one experiment. We started it a few months ago, and we now have 40 people trained in doing this. And it's in 10 different neighborhoods throughout the city, and people are now coming together on their own. I don't have to be there. People from our organization don't necessarily have to be there. And what we're seeing is that it's really filling people up to be given a role, to be given, some responsibility and a tool set to, have an impact. And that's, one example of it. I'm sure you can relate through the work that you're doing with raising money and building.
Yeah, well, you said something over lunch. You were talking about, you said people just need the permission to connect.
Yeah.
Permission to connect. And that's what blows my mind about all of this stuff is it's exactly that. People need the permission to connect, or people sometimes just need the path. We're all waiting for it. This is a very high-level group of doers and movers and shakers that are in this room already, so they kind of already get it. And are likely already doing a lot of different things like yourself, Katya, doing things all over the world. And what fascinates me is as soon as you pave that path, then the amount of people, it's like a vacuum that people come to, like the Big Quiet, where they're like, I've been waiting for this, and 1,000 people come up to sit in silence together. And that's the thing is there's no going back after you feel that. There's no going back after you feel that empowerment, that connection. You can't change. Like Marlon couldn't go back after he built that house with Senor Rodriguez. I know from the first campaign that I did where I raised that $10,000 to fund that schoolhouse, there's no going back. I'm a totally changed person. You think I'm going to be like, oh, that was fun, and just go back to selling condos all day long? It's not going to happen. I became obsessed with it. It was like my gateway drug. It was that one school, right? I was like, I need another hit. I don't know if that's appropriate right now, but that's my analogy. I was like, I need another hit of this. I need to do this more and more and more. And I got obsessed with it. And I started to crave this feeling of whether you call it giving or you call it connection, whatever, oneness. I call it oneness. And when people raise money to build a home for a family that they've never met, and then they go and meet that family, it's just the beginning. I kind of feel like a drug dealer sometimes being like, oh, you'll be back. Like this is just the one. And that's what's happening is as soon as people come on these trips, they're at the trip going, how can I come on another trip? I've got 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 people that want to come on the next trip. There's an organization here in New York called Camp Rosé all day, which is what it sounds like. You go to summer camp for adults and you drink rosé all day. Which is awesome. And so what they're doing is they're doing Camp Rosé all day, Nicaragua, right? And they're bringing their whole community down. They'll end up building, I think on that weekend, that's in November, we already have 20 homes funded. They'll probably end up being like 30 homes funded that will end up getting built in a weekend. And those people will go back. And so what we try to, we're just trying to keep up with the demand and trying to say, like, look, if you've come on one of the trips with us, we want every single trip that you come on with us forever to be free. So we want you to come for free. So as long as you bring, whatever you want to call it, an ambassador program or just come back for free program, we just say, look, just bring 5 friends and you're free. And if you bring 10 friends, you're free. And we're going to do some sort of kickback so that you can be remunerated for your time. And my dream is that in a year from now, 2 years from now, we really lean into this millennial generation and what it really wants, which is freedom. 40% of the millennial workforce will be remote within the next 3 years. 40% not working in an office building. It's crazy. And what millennials want is they want community, they want purpose, and they want autonomy and freedom in their workplace. And the last thing. Last thing about that is, and that's my dream, is to be able to provide that so that millennials can go and organize a trip, bring 30 of their friends, and that's what they could potentially even do as a job. And go on one trip a month. The rest of the month is doing cool events and whatnot and bringing people together, and they come on these trips, have an amazing experience, and it expands from there.
It's amazing. I was kind of like, one word resonated with me from what you both said, and that's immersiveness. That I love that word because I've noticed how what we like to do has changed, in terms of we don't just want to go and sit and watch in theater anymore as millennials. We want to be kind of somehow in it. And the same of what we were just saying, we don't want to just donate our money. We would like to be involved in somehow really seeing the fruits of that work. The same way we don't want to just sit in the big meditation. We want to be facilitators about all of this. How does kind of the immersiveness helps with this oneness, with this travel? that we're experiencing within what you do.
You want me to
Go.
Jesse?
Go ahead.
Okay. I mean, that's everything. Like the trip that we have designed at 6 days, right? So you land on Friday and you leave on Wednesday, and it's very specifically designed to push people outside their comfort zone right away. So you land on Friday night, big group dinner, set an intention, let's be open, let's be vulnerable, let's know that this is a safe space, let's know you can cry, you can laugh, you can, all of these things, experience this rainbow of emotions that you're gonna feel tomorrow, because you're gonna meet a family that's living in more poverty than you've ever, potentially ever experienced before, and you're gonna get to know them, you're not just gonna see it on TV. So you're gonna feel all this incredible range of feelings, and we promote people sinking into that and feeling every single one of those feelings. And so it's designed that you get up, you've only been in the country for 14 hours. You get up Saturday morning, and again, you're building all day and building all day Sunday. So by the end of the day on Sunday, your heart is wide open and you are immersed. You're eating the local food. The food that is made for you by the mother that's going to be living in the home that you're building. And you're breaking bread with local volunteers, with the family, with your fellow journeyers as well. And so completely immersed in that culture, so that the 3 days following, where we go to the beach and we do yoga and we surf and meditate and connect and journal, so that those 3 days you're already broken wide open. You've already been so immersed that you're a completely different person. We had a guy named Ivo who came on this last trip who said he hasn't cried for 15 years. He hasn't opened up for 15 years. He used to think vulnerability was a sign of weakness. And he couldn't stop crying on this trip because it unlocked all of these emotions. And my experience back in 2009 is that when you're fully immersed all over the food, the smells, everything, you're a different person. And you actually have the ability to be disconnected from that person, that projection, that person that you think that you should be back in New York or LA or San Francisco or Toronto or Vancouver, wherever you live. You have time to sit back and sink into what potentially is the real you. And I think that in my experience only comes through immersion.
Yeah. Yeah, immersion with meditation. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you have the your kind of obvious way to look at it when you're meditating. You're going inwards or sort of exploring yourself. But for me, what gets me more excited in regards to creating immersion of the experiences that we're building is we're always thinking about how we can challenge social norms and how we can just pepper in a little bit of discomfort in whatever we're doing with our gatherings. Because I believe that that deep immersion occurs when we step out of the safe zone and into that uncomfortable zone, and that's really when the human connection starts to occur. So the way that we're looking at that is what can we do socially that we know people want, that kind of makes you cringe right before it happens, but then after it happens, there's a sense of shared accomplishment. I just revealed something that I've been wanting to say, but I haven't had the permission to say, and I was so nervous that I was going to sound bad saying it, but all of these people were able to relate. There's that, to me, that's and now I'm fully immersed in emotion, I'm fully immersed in connection. So that's sort of one of the lines that we work with to go there.
How do you make sure that, do you mind if I ask this question?
Absolutely.
How do you make sure, when that safe space is created, that people can go down to a place maybe that they haven't been for a long time and could get stuck there? How do you make sure that they kind of come out empowered? And that doesn't happen. They go down somewhere and get stuck.
It's something that we're still figuring out. We work with a handful of experts and advisors around facilitation. And we work with a pretty simple set of agreements. There's kind of standard emotional intelligence agreements. Really quickly, it's respect someone while they're speaking, pay attention. Be aware of time, so you're not hogging the mic. When people are nervous and sharing, they tend to ramble on. Create an awareness that whatever we talk about exists within a vault within that group. Nothing will be shared elsewhere. And to not give advice as much as we feel like we want to come from the heart and help someone. If we can just listen and allow them to be heard, and if we have our own experience that we want to relate to it, we relate it through our own lens. That is, if we can stick to that simple framework, a pretty good way to create safety, enable people to be empowered by the group. And it doesn't always work, I mean, we can't control people, but that's been the framework that we've been playing with so far.
Cool.
I liked also something else you mentioned at lunch. This is the digital lunch that we keep mentioning. You said that you experiment with the way meditation is basically presented to people because, you know, meditation still has a very strong religious connotation in a way. And this is not something that necessarily resonates with everybody, with the younger generation. So how do you bridge and kind of pull this method out of its normal context and present it to people?
It's all based on this notion of, for me, meditation isn't a lifestyle. It's part of my life. You know, I've been meditating since I was running my company as a person in my early 20s and was dealing with a lot of stress. But I never sort of showed up in the world in the way that you may think of a meditator. I was just doing my thing. So when we started to create community around meditation, it was clear that that was true for a lot of other individuals. There were people that lived very active modern lives and happened to have a meditation practice or were exploring meditation. So our experiences reflect that. We have a group meditation, but we do it in a cool space. We play hip hop music. We bring in normal food. The experience is sort of blended. It's the way we refer to it as sort of a blend between culture and well-being. So just making sure that culture is a part of these experiences in a way that doesn't feel forced, but feels in line with how we live our lives, is how we like to show up when we do Medi Club and Big Quiet events. And I think it has a lot to do with why it's been received well, because by blending culture into what we do, I believe we're able to meet people at the level that they're at. And a lot of our events attract people who are new to meditation, and that feels important.
That's wonderful. Another thing I've observed with both of you, from what I know so far, is I like that you let yourself evolve and what you do evolve. You know, you don't get stuck into like a certain picture, but you let it, fluidly move. How do you kind of maintain this or allow it to continue to evolve?
Man, I think this, building a company is, in my mind, the most spiritual growth that I've ever gone through. Like today, man, I had the worst call this morning. I woke up to just emails. You know those emails when you open them and you're like, do you know what I'm talking about? Isn't it crazy? You're like, oh yeah, I'm super grounded today. Like one email spiral. Yeah. I had the spiral email this morning, and then a phone call right before I got on the subway here. And it was just like my whole stomach felt like it was like burning, with stress and anxiety. And luckily, I've been meditating almost every day for about 10 years. It's like the thing that I come back to. It's the one thing that will continue to come back and ground me. And all of these experiences, not to sound like Mr. Super Positive Optimistic guy, but all of these experiences, the harder the experience, the bigger opportunity it is for us to sink into it and just say, oh, we can't swear. Just to say yes. Just to say yes, this is what's happening right now. Excuse me, good catch. Pardon me. To say yes, this is what's happening, and to never close, to be committed to, this is my own commitment, is to never close my heart. My commitment is to always, to continue to open more and more and more. And this is from a book I read recently called The Surrender Experiment by a guy named Michael Singer, who wrote The Untethered Soul, which is just blowing my mind right now. These two books are just so mind-blowing. And he teaches that to, no matter what's happening, what we will typically do is close up around something happens or something happened earlier in our life, and we go, oh, I don't like that. And we kind of close up around that feeling, and then for the rest of our life, that didn't help. And then for the rest of our life, whenever something like that comes up again, it hits that wound, and we close up even more and more and more. Yet when these emails or these anxieties or whatever it is happens that triggers that feeling, that's a gateway for those feelings to actually be released. So if something happens again, whether it be like jealousy or envy or shame or guilt or whatever the feelings that we all feel, something happens along those lines, that's an opportunity to sit there and go yes, and to open. And in my mind, it's like letting the fire burn instead of trying to like shove it out. Is like letting the fire burn, and in my mind, it's a gateway for those other feelings to come out and actually to get released in the first place. So, my practice every day is just saying yes, yes, be here, yes, yes, and meditating as much as humanly possible. And in my mind, a company will only evolve as fast as, the core team. of that company. So I know it is my duty to evolve as a person as fast as the universe wants me to evolve, and to keep up with that evolving, which gives a lot of challenges, because challenges force evolution. And to keep up with that, because I know that Journey wants to be a huge company. The universe wants it to be a massive, massive organization that changes, cajillions of lives. And so for it to be that, I need to continue to open. And so those happen kind of simultaneously in my mind.
Wonderful.
For me, I feel like the past 2 years since I left my company and I've been doing this work has been about relearning the way that I was sort of brought up societally, which, grew up privileged, Los Angeles, private school, work hard to get into NYU, did that whole thing. And so much of that process for me was about nailing particular outcomes, taking this class and doing that thing so I get to this place and have this amount of money. And I think that there's something to be said for living life in that way. Where it gets tricky is when the room for sort of the unexpected to blossom something powerful, when that gets kind of cut off or lost, I think it's important to start to talk about how to make a shift. For me, I've found that it's really important to create space to follow my intuition or my charm, that sort of fine level of feeling that will pull me towards a decision, and run with it without knowing what the outcome looks like, or without knowing what it's going to turn into. When I left my company, I didn't know I was going to be, hosting mass meditations. I'm not even a meditation teacher. This is something that's sort of unfolded through a bit of faith and a bit of, following my heart. And that process has been very, very challenging as well, mainly because of the uncertainty attached to it. So for me, you mentioned meditation. One of the really powerful things about my meditation practice is that it just creates more of a clear space to be able to hear my intuition and to be able to follow my gut. And I find that my life is more colorful when I act on that, even if it goes against logic. So the fluidity that you speak of, for me, comes back to following intuition.
Yeah, wonderful, beautiful. Tying it back to purpose, or did you want to say something, Taylor?
I was just going to see if we're going to ask questions of the audience.
Yes, but let me maybe ask this question, first question of the
You're the
audience
boss.
from the stage. Do you know what your purpose is?
Thanks for saving the deepest question and not briefing it about us at lunch. Briefing us about it at lunch. Do I know what my purpose is? I think I'm continually checking in on what is my purpose at this exact moment. So, 3 years ago, my purpose was building Change Heroes. I felt. And for my outward purpose, let's say, like if we get all Eckhart Tolle on us here, then it's Tolle?
Eckhart Tolle.
I could see it in your face. You're like, oh, Eckhart Tolle. That there's this inner and outer purpose, and our inner purpose is to be present, right? And that's always like why the word here goes in my mind 2,000 times a day. It's like here, be right here. Because when you're here, in my experience, the voice quiets. Anybody else have that voice in their head that never stops? Yeah? I have it loud and clear. So when I say here, that slows. And then my outer purpose is, at the moment, 3 years ago, I was building Change Heroes, and my outer purpose at the moment now is, my biggest dream, which is sharing the most transformational experience that I ever had with as many people as humanly possible, and saying yes to what the universe brings. And I know I'm just talking very metaphysical right now, but I truly believe that if Mike came to me after this talk and he said, Taylor, we need to do something together, and here's what I think we should do, I would not look at that like this guy Mike that I met 7 minutes ago who's got a random idea. I would look at it like the universe came all the way to bring Mike and I together with this idea, and that I would honor it as a profound and deeply meaningful experience, and want to explore that as much as possible. So inner, outer purpose.
Yeah. Okay. Jesse?
For me, I to be honest, I used to torture myself about this question. When I left my company, I created this mission identify Jesse's purpose, and I put too much pressure on it. And ultimately, what I've come to learn is, like Taylor said, our purposes are always evolving and they're always shifting, and there are sort of multiple facets to it. And ultimately, I believe when I left my company, my purpose was to get clear about my purpose. That was kind of where I was in my life. What's become clear over the past couple of years is that I think that there are a few things that I'm here to do on this earth. And one of them is to bring people together and to create permission for people to connect in just the simplest of ways, even sitting in quiet with thousands of strangers. I believe another part of my purpose is to be a mirror for others. I like revealing my challenges to allow others to realize that we're all the same in that way. I think that there's real power in us realizing we're all mirrors for each other's. So I like to be able to reflect that and stand for that. I believe part of my purpose is to lead. That's what I'm running with right now, but I'm sure that will evolve.
I like that. I love that. Shall we open for some questions from the audience?
Sure.
Good. So you guys, you can find 2 microphones on both ends. So you see we have very open speakers, so anything that's on your mind, please share.
Hey, thanks for coming. I appreciate that the universe has brought you here and us together. I have an interesting background with kind of both of the things that you do. Doing international travel, volunteerism, working for a company that did that, in addition to studying like men's development and a lot of stuff in grad school, which very much ties to men not being able to show affect and be able to express the things they're able to express in those sort of meditation circles. So my question is, and as for Taylor, as kind of connected to the international travel piece, what do you do to draw the dotted line back home? Because I think that there's always a slippery slope of volunteerism, and the idea that, as you mentioned, people get a hit and they want more, but it feels like they're in withdrawal when they come home, whereas we have an abundance of that drug here, right? There's so much to be done in addition to, people facing perhaps comparable levels of poverty, like a mile from where we live, but then the mindset of, I went to Nicaragua, where should I go next to go and assert this positivity? And maybe it's once every year, maybe it's once every 6 months. However, what can we do to infuse that in not only our local communities, but give people the empowerment to do that where they live?
Yeah, I love that question. That happens to be Mike, who I keep referencing. We've been looking at what is the right entry point. When you're working in development, whether it be local or global, it's a very complex world, right? As you know, you've seen it. There's some organizations that are doing phenomenal work, and there's some organizations that aren't doing phenomenal work. And it can be really tough navigating that ecosystem. One thing that I'm really excited about locally as in the United States, not necessarily, I live in Los Angeles, it's not local to Los Angeles, is the poorest community in this country is in South Dakota. And in Canada, we call them Indigenous people or First Nations people. What do you call them? You call them Native Americans? Indigenous culture resonates better with me. But so it's an Indigenous community, and they will live 15 people to a trailer in this community, right? One tiny bathroom, maybe 1 or 2 bedrooms. And so something that I'm honored and humbled to be able to get involved with is housing initiatives in that community. And right now, building Senor Rodriguez a house, it's quite simple. The organization that we partner with in Nicaragua and El Salvador, it works in 19 countries, right? They build 100,000 of these homes. They prefabricated homes. It's quite simple. The lay of the land is set. This organization's been around for 20 years. Sometimes local stuff is a bit more complicated, or complicated in a different way, I should say. And it's going to take a lot of time for us to have something that we are going to show the world, this is what we're doing locally, but we're exploring a number of different initiatives in LA and throughout the country to make sure that when our people come back home, that's just the beginning. And that is the gateway for them to get more involved locally, whether it be volunteering at a soup kitchen, whether it be doing something in their own community, or whether it be coming on a trip with us to South Dakota and getting involved in Indigenous affairs. So I love that question, and it's something that's on my heart every day, and it's something we're working on really, really hard.
Awesome, thanks. And do you have like a mantra / paradigm by which you are allowing people to go back and again in whatever city they're from to continue this work, even though it's not as formalized in a larger construct with regard to, as you said, the business infrastructure and the difficulties of actually having large project work. But the idea that if I'm from, New Jersey and I go back, what is my impetus to do things there with the way that you currently have it organized?
Can you rephrase the question? I didn't quite.
Yeah, so the idea of like the message that you're putting out there to folks, again, while there aren't necessarily, like you said, you're looking at development and things in LA right now. That's not currently up and running. What is the thought process and what are you trying to instill in the folks that are there? Is it like a specific model that you have? Is there like a curricular thought process to say, when you get back home, we're trying to kind of repeat these ideas of, certainly human connection, but how does that take root for you?
That's the beautiful thing about this is, and it's always such a level of controlling and not controlling, and really we look at ourselves as building the sandbox for people to play in. They come on these trips and we've built this sandbox, and what they do in that sandbox and how they play is up to them. And the same thing for when they come home. It's like everyone has such unique talents and abilities that we would rather err on the side of catalyze that feeling in them that wants to do more, that needs another hit, that can't live without serving people, and showing them, giving them permission to serve them in their own way. And the ideas that people come up with have been like absolutely incredible. The very simplest is bringing more people on trips. Some people that come would be an architect and they want to design something like a schoolhouse locally, or some people would be a chef and they want to make sure that they can use all of the scraps, in the kitchen. There's just so many different ways to serve people locally and globally, and we believe that our job is not to dictate how people should serve, is just to be an example of, look, this is how we want to serve. We love travel, we love experiences, we love creating cultural shifts, and then it's up to the person. Like Mike, if you come on this, you're obviously a very talented gentleman working here at Google, and handsome, and his job. And what you would do would be completely different than what Katya would do. Katya's coming on a trip with us to Mexico next month, and she's going to be teaching yoga. And when she comes back from that trip, she's a community builder. She's going to be doing so many different things in this community, probably within Google and outside of Google. And what Jesse would do coming back from that trip, if let's say he wasn't already this like epic community builder that he was, he would come back after the trip and do something completely different than Katya. And that's what we love, is seeing like those different colors instead of telling people here's the black and white way to get involved. It's up to them.
Cool. Thanks.
We have another question over here.
Hi guys, I'm Brooke. Thanks so much for coming. On my spiritual practice and whenever I'm doing meditations, I look around and it's all women, so it's really great to see you guys up there. Can you talk a little bit about the art of transition? And you touched on it a little bit with switching from your switching between jobs or between passion projects. Just to dive a little bit more into that thought process around, co-creating kind of with your intuition and then, with other humans, of course.
I cry in the shower.
Same.
Yeah, we're both shower criers.
Yeah.
How do you cry? Like I do like the fetal.
Oh, I stand and just sob.
Really?
These are my coworkers. I'm very stable.
That's great. I mean, I'll literally do the 10-second thing because you're probably fantastic at this transition, because you transition from hamburger to bikes to meditations. They're not easy, I literally remember like on my knees crying trying to transition from being real estate agent to kind of social entrepreneur, because it was all I knew. And I'd finally gotten good at something. I was like, yeah, I'm so good at this. It was 5 years and I was doing great at it, and I knew deep down that I had to leave it all behind and to start in something that I didn't know anything about, and that I would be new again, Mm-hmm. Yet that's also freeing at the same time. So I don't know that transition. For me, it hasn't been an art. It's been more of like a chaos whirlwind tornado.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, is deep down, it's like you have to listen to that, right? You know that something's going to have to transition. And if you don't listen to that, then things don't go well. Mm-hmm. So, bad example. He might have a good example.
I think, so transition is one of the most powerful things in human existence. And my belief is that, if one of the best ways to feel alive is to follow your heart in regards to transition. So just kind of start with that reminder. And with a lot of things in life, things that bring excitement and color and aliveness come with great pain. And what I saw, or what I've seen over the past 2 years, and really for me, my transition was heavy because I left this thing that I had built for 9 years, and I really sort of defined myself by having this company. I started when I was 19. It was sexy, it was music, it was tech, all this stuff. And I left, and I had no idea what I wanted to do next. And I had no idea how much it was going to really sort of devastate me and beat me up. And one of the things that became really clear, I don't know if you can relate to this at all, is the sense of loneliness that I felt while going through this period of transition. I really felt like I was the only person in New York experiencing this, watching everyone just run and seemingly crush it and just live these perfect, happy lives that you see on social media. But what was so interesting was when I would talk about my process around transition, people would come out of the woodwork to say, hey, I'm thinking about my next steps. I'm thinking about, figuring out how to align more with what feels right to my heart. And probably my biggest takeaway around the process is that there's not enough conversation around transition because, like I kind of mentioned before, we're often raised to live a very sort of clear path, and there isn't much room to talk about this beautiful, powerful thing that is transition. So one thing that I'm interested in now, and we can talk more about this later if you'd like to, is we have a sub-community within MediClub of people going through transition. It's people that are thinking about leaving their jobs or their relationships or are currently going through it and are going through the ups and the downs together. And I think that that is the most powerful way to experience it, because I don't believe there's any way that transition can be a walk in the park. It's just going to be, it's kind of like a battleground, but you earn your stripes.
Mm-hmm. That's really helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Brooke.
Thanks, Brooke.
So any kind of last thoughts, words, anything you would like to leave our audience with?
Jesse?
Nothing's coming to mind, but it's a treat. It's a treat to be able to have these conversations. This is the first time I've been able to do this on a platform like that. So thank you.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, guys. I would say I would almost be the opposite of trying to leave anything with you. I would love. I'm just honored to be here talking to you guys, and the ideas that have come out of Google that have affected me. You guys know a guy named Dan Fredenberg, who passed away on Everest recently, about a year ago.
Yeah.
Who worked for Google X. He was a good friend and advisor for my previous company, and the things that Dan brought to the table for ideas were just like bananas, right? The guy is just, I don't know if any of you guys knew him personally. He's larger than life. He was absolutely brilliant, almost like too brilliant for this world. He's almost too good at life. You just hack everything, and had a huge heart. And so the things that he brought to my life for ideas, for initiatives, for ways to grow my previous company were exponential. And being that we're here, I'm wearing his old necklace. Being that we're here at Google, I would just be so honored if you guys have any ideas or any thoughts of collaborations, or if you have that feeling inside like, I think that they should be doing this, or I'd love to get involved in that, or Taylor needs advice on this, or Taylor needs to stop wearing those ugly shoes. Whatever it is, I would be so honored to hear your feedback, and so that, I know it's kind of selfish, but I would love to leave here with your leaving something on me. So please reach out, and my email is t@journey333.com. So very, very simple, t@journey333.com. Even if it's just like a word of advice, I would love to hear from you guys.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, both. So if you'd like to read more or learn more, Taylor's company is called Journey, or journey333.com. And for Jesse, for the Big Quiet, I think it's Big Quiet, the Big Quiet.
BigQuiet.nyc.
At NYC.
And MediClub. We don't have a website, but if you Google it, you can learn more about what we're up to.
Perfect.
When's the next Big Quiet?
The MediClub is the first Wednesday of every month in the West Village, and then we also have our smaller circles that happen in multiple neighborhoods every Wednesday night. And the next Big Quiet will be in the fall.
Beautiful. Will you come on one of our trips and teach meditation?
I would love that.
Not to put you on the spot or anything. And if you would like to take yoga from this gem of a human being, she's going to be in Mexico with us September 30th to October 5th. where we're doing 2 days of home building, 3 days at a beautiful eco hotel called Rotavento, which has incredible little cabins all over this hillside, a private lake, and a lot of space for meditation and yoga and morning dance parties and connection. We'd love to have you there too.
Thank you very much, both.
Thank you.